Our next speaker, David, is the Clean Energy Finance Project Lead for Sustainability Victoria. David's got over 20 years worth of experience in the sector. He's currently working with SV looking at the range of different finance options for businesses and also for the state government moving forward. Has a Clean Energy Council background and has led a range of roles with the executive team in that area over the last few years. And I'll hand it over to you now, David.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ed, and thanks everyone for joining. I just want to talk quickly about 4 different programs that are currently on offer for small businesses from the state government. The first 2 are energy efficiency, and they're kind of related, and I'll talk about those. The next one's a solar and renewable package, and then the 4th or the last is just a comparative service, which was mentioned just a second ago. So next slide, Ed. So the first program that we've got is a Small Business Energy Saver program, which was really a stimulus program through that was started through the pandemic. It really just aimed at reducing cost of installation of energy efficiency products, and also obviously reducing greenhouse gas emissions as well. It is linked to the ongoing Victorian Energy Upgrade Program, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. The program itself was up to $2,000 per business as a bonus for energy efficiency upgrades, and specifically targeted SMEs as part of that. I guess to note here, and you can see that halfway down the page, is the funding for this will end at 30th of June. So if you are interested in this program, there's still time, but the installation of any upgrade, and I'll go into what they are in a minute, it needs to happen before 30th of June. But there are still places available for this one. The program does run on top of the Victorian Energy Upgrade, and you can access both at the same time. So effectively, this is just a bonus on top of the VEU, which I'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. The types of upgrades you can do under this energy efficiency program are, hot water systems, air conditioners, things like that, ventilation fans, and that type of thing. Next slide, please. In terms of accessing, the best place, and the website for this is really pretty good. The best place to access this is the website to work out eligible products, whether you're eligible, etc., for this incentive scheme. The one thing that is part of this is we have engaged, particularly for anyone who's from regional Victoria on the call, there are a list of local representatives, and it's on the site, and you can scroll through to specific contacts so that there's should be someone in your regional or local level who's able to talk you through these incentives and actually get this going pretty quickly if you're interested in this one. Next slide, please, Ed. The next program that I wanted to talk about was, and I guess this is really the longer term program that runs in Victoria. It's up until 2029, and it is the state's largest energy efficiency program. The mechanism that's used here, or the way that the benefit is calculated, is through the issuing of certificates, which are called VEECs, or affectionately known as VEECs, Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificates, and they run in a very similar way to the federal schemes for STCs, etc., etc. The way under the program, the elements that will determine the cost rebate, there's 2 elements. The first is the greater, and I'll talk about the type of things in a minute, but the greater the increase in the energy efficiency upgrade that you make, the more of these certificates that you'll receive, and there is a schedule for that, which is all on the website. And the second element of that is the price of those certificates, which is market dependent and variable. And on the slide there, I've said it's $70 per tonne, or per tonne abatement. is actually about 50, 60 at the moment. So it goes up and down, and it has actually been as high as 80. So in effect, what happens is you get a scheduled number of certificates as part of your upgrade, multiplied by a market rate for the certificates, and then that will give you the amount that your upgrade is going to be discounted back by in terms of purchase. Hopefully that makes sense. Next slide, Ed. And so how that might work in practice, and this is probably a little bit busy, and I would caveat this by saying I've just included this as an illustrative example because of the way that the pricing incentive works here. It is variable and it will change over time. So I think this is from about 6 months ago. So if you look at the heat pump there towards the top, $2,000 cost of installing. When you have both of the programs that I've described, the VEU and the Small Business Energy Saving program from just a minute ago, you get a 7. So you're actually only left with $300 to pay on that installation. So there's saving up front. There's also ongoing saving by being energy efficient with your product. And there's also, as you can see there, there's a carbon abatement as well as part of this.
Sorry, David, we just missed you for a moment there. We placed you on mute. Could you just recap on that for participants?
Yeah, I was just saying, so that it just as an example of that heat pump. So if you've got the cost of the heat pump's $2,000 through the incentive schemes of the Small Business Energy Saver that I was mentioning earlier, plus this Victorian Energy Upgrade, you can potentially get something like $1,700 discount on that 2,000 install. So you're only left with $300 of capital outlay. So whilst part of that falls off at 30th of June, as I said, the incentives are still pretty good to do some good capital works in this area for those that are interested, and it generates ongoing savings and also carbon reduction as well. Probably the other thing to note on the website here for the Victorian Energy Upgrade program is there is a list of products. So there's a specific list that will tell you exactly what's eligible for the program. There's also a great calculator, so you can actually work through exactly what you might get back from this as well, and a list of accredited providers that you can have a chat to as well. So it's a good scheme. It is going for the long term, and seems to be there's good uptake of this in the marketplace. Next slide, please. The third program talk about, which is probably pretty well known now, is the Solar Victoria program. Is an ongoing program and well funded. The program's been running for a few years, and people will have known this from residential, and there's been massive uptake over the years in residential and now for business as well. Really, it's targeting for business. It's really targeting 30 kilowatts. There's 15,000 rebates over 3 years. They're released as the market demands. There's currently 3,200 available as of today, and yeah, there's some good savings that are possible with the installation of solar under the program. Recently, they introduced an interest-free loan as well, so you can actually get the capital cost of this. I'm sure there's conditions attached to that, but there is the offer of having an interest-free loan for 12 to 24 months for the installation of capital. And as you can see there, in terms of rented premises, very common question. There you can do. They've changed the terms of this program so that you can do rented premises. There's just a little bit of additional work that needs to happen to make sure that that's all viable and doable. But the SolarVic website's got a lot of good information on it. I encourage you to go and have a look at that if you haven't already and you're interested in solar installation. And last slide, Ed. Is the Energy Compare website, which is effectively a calculator and it's both retail, so both residential and business. to go on and you put in a little bit of information about your electricity bills and your location, etc., and it will actually give you a whole bunch of information on different retailers. And so whilst there's some other, people in the market, commercial players that are in the market doing this sort of comparison, this is sort of an unbiased way of looking at this and trying to reduce your energy costs on the way through. So that's a good little handy tool to check out if you have a chance.
David, do businesses get the same $250 rebate that is on offer for residential customers or in July?
I had a quick look at that yesterday. I don't think so, but I can come back to you on that. I think they're still working through the detail on that one too. I've got to say. But the website at the moment says it's residential specific. But yeah, that might be updated through time.
Okay, great, thanks.
Back to you.
Cool. Thanks a lot, David. I'm sure there's lots of questions that people are thinking of right now. I know between Taz and David, we've got a lot of the rebates covered, whether they're the VEEKs or the STCs or whatnot. David can talk about some of that sort of stuff from a government perspective. And I'm sure, Taz, you've had a bit of experience with accessing that either through the work that you've done with solar installs or heat pumps too. Just a reminder, everyone, we haven't seen many questions come through yet. If you've got anything that's in the back of your mind right now, chuck it in the chat, please. We'll get back to it and collate it as part of the panel session. Good way for us to make sure that if something springs to mind during one of the presentations, that you capture that and log it, and then we can have a bit of a discussion about that later on as well. I know I've got a few. I'm going to hold off for the moment, but when we do get to that session, I'm quite interested in hearing from the participants and the attendees as well. Thanks for that, David, again.